Welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. While we wait on Bitcoin to make a decision on whether it's going to test the top of the Gaussian channel again before it goes to 36K, I think it's a good time to take a look at the BBWP and explain what that is and how to use it, especially with the reading that it has right now on multiple time frames. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and leave me a comment below. So the BBWP stands for the Bollinger Band with percentile. And essentially what that measures is the contraction that the Bollinger Bands have, which I currently don't have the Bollinger Bands up on this graph, but let's go ahead and put them on so we can take a look at it. You can see the Bollinger Bands, whenever they're closer together, they're represented by the two blue lines and the blue space in between. When the Bollinger Bands are closer together, the BBWP, which is on the bottom of the screen, is toward the bottom, which means that they're in a contracted phase. When the BBWP expands and goes up to the top of the range closer to the 100% area, that means that the BBWP is expanding. The Bollinger Bands themselves are a representation of volatility in the market, how aggressive moves are happening. The Bollinger Bands and the BBWP are both direction neutral. They don't look about whether something's going to go up, and they don't look at something if it's going to go down. What they look at is the expansion and contraction of volatility as it relates to that asset. Because the weekly chart is such a large time frame, I think this is a really good starting place to look at how the BBWP behaves in relation to the Bollinger Band and in relation to price. The first thing we have to note is how the Bollinger Band with percentile actually appears on the graph. So if we look down here on the bottom, you can see that as it goes toward the bottom, the major expansions happen between the 10 and 15% area. So what we generally like to see is we like to see a top out on the BBWP, which would be like around here on this weekly chart back in January of 2021, whenever we had that first leg up in the bull market run. But then it didn't actually completely reset all the way down to the bottom until now. It got close a couple times, like in April of 2022, and also in like the August to October of 2022 areas. Generally, we like to see a reset below the 10% area for both the BBWP and the signal indicator, which is in white. The BBWP is the multicolored line. The signal indicator is the one in white. Generally, the movement in price will follow the direction of the stochastic indicator. This doesn't always happen. It's not 100% foolproof, but when expansion does occur, and it continues to move up toward the top of the range, generally the way that the stochastic is poised, the BBWP or the price will follow the BBWP and the stochastic. It doesn't always happen. It's about a 70 to 80% chance. Don't quote me on that, but it's a very high percentage that when that happens and when it expands, price will follow the stochastic poised direction. So clearly, just going back here on the chart, the last time that we had a full reset where the blue indicator showed us that we had a full reset was July of 2020, just before the bull market. It was after the flu dump and just before the actual massive run up in the bull market. So you can see the BBWP reset all the way down here at the bottom. And when it crossed up the signal indicator, it was sitting around, it was between 11 and 20%. Because the weeks ranged, 1 week was 11%, 1 week was 20%. As that expanded, there was a decent sized move. I mean, I can try to measure it here. We'll just call that like a 37% move, which is definitely no joke, especially if you're using a leverage account. But then it kind of went back down and went to 7.94%, which is not a complete reset. But it's kind of like one of those areas where we go, okay, we need to reevaluate the situation. And since the BBWP has gone back down below the signal line and below 10%, could we potentially have an expansion after that? And then again, the BBWP crossed up the signal indicator around the 13% area. Again, it's between 10 and 15% is kind of that magical area where we want to really pay attention. And you can see when that crossed up, the stochastic oscillator was pointed up. The K line had crossed up the D, the money flow was coming into the market, and the K line was aggressively accelerating to the upside. So it was poised for an upside movement in price. And when that happened, BBWP expanded all the way. Let's do a little measured move here just from the cross. When the BBWP crossed, Bitcoin was sitting around, say, $11,000. By the time that had fully expanded, price had gone up to around $65,000 for a gain of roughly 500%. On the weekly chart, obviously, when a BBWP expansion occurs, it's going to be a bigger percentage move most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. The smaller the time frame, the BBWP is still useful, but you can't really count on the percentage either direction, up or down, being as big as it would be on something like a weekly chart. Generally, the longer the chart time frame, the bigger the move is going to be based off of the indicators that you're using. So the reason that I bring this up is for the average investor. The average person who's not watching the charts every single day, who's just looking to make long-term swing trade decisions intelligently, could definitely use the BBWP. And the reason that I bring that up right now is because we're kind of in this indecision period where Bitcoin is kind of trapped between 29 and 31K. The top of the Gaussian channel is sitting at 28.6. And generally, Bitcoin does retest the top of the Gaussian channel before it finishes its bear market relief rally or its first rally of the new bull market, whichever way you want to look at it. We're kind of waiting on that. There was a dump today, but we really haven't done anything substantial, in my opinion. While we're thinking about that, it's a really good time to note that the BBWP has completely reset itself. This is the first time since July of 2020 that the BBWP has come all the way to the bottom, and it's currently sitting at 5.95% with a signal indicator at 2.86%. And generally, like I said, when we cross that 10% area, that's where we really want to become interested, because when it crosses up the signal and it's above 10%, we kind of want to look at the stochastic oscillator here to kind of figure out potentially the direction that price is going to go. So right now, it hasn't really crossed up 10% yet, but at the close of this week, it very well could. And if we do see that cross up above the 10% area and we see the stochastic pointing up, it could lead to a very large move. It may not lead to a large move. It may lead to a 20 to 30% move. It may lead to a 100% move. We really don't know. But the fact of the matter is that this is just one more indicator that we can use to make long-term and short-term decisions, though I would argue that the BBWP is better for longer-term decisions, somewhere between like a month's swing trade and an entire cycle swing trade. So for another piece of context, I've gone ahead and pulled up the 5-day chart just so we can look at the BBWP on that, where the signal has actually fired off. You can see here the BBWP is sitting at 18.65%, and it's crossed up the signal indicator. The stochastic is currently pointed in an upwards posture. But even with that, Bitcoin is in a corrective mode today. So it's not to say that just because the BBWP crossed up, that Bitcoin is just going to rocket straight up, or whatever asset that you're looking at is going to rocket straight up. It doesn't really work like that. There are a lot of other factors to consider. And in this particular case, what we're really keeping an eye on is the EMA9 and the Gaussian channel, like we've been talking about for a few weeks on this channel now. Especially with like the news coming out with BlackRock calling Bitcoin a digital, international digital asset and a new form of gold, essentially. It's hyper bullish, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are taking profits in that 31 to 32K area because they've already, they bought back here at 17K and now they're just taking pure profit on that. So it's going to be a little bit of a battle here. I think it's going to be some sideways for a couple of more days before the market makes a decision. But in the meantime, I thought it was extremely important to point out the BBWP and how it can be used. If we go to an even smaller time frame, like let's say we go to the 2-day time frame, you can see that BBWP has already expanded. When it finally expanded, it was right here on June 18th. Well, at least the candle that closed on June 18th. When it finally expanded, the K line was pointed up on the stochastic oscillator, but since then it's topped out. Now the stochastic oscillator is showing overbought, and the BBWP is starting to cross back below the signal indicator. So you can see how the shorter time frames will give you a more reasonable probability on a shorter term move versus the weekly chart, which is just now considering crossing up on the BBWP. So just as a bonus for everyone, I do want to point this out here since it's relevant to this exact moment in time. Look at the EMA9 and look at the top of the Gaussian channel. They are in the exact same place. And if there's two places that Bitcoin likes to go in a corrective fashion, it's the top of the Gaussian channel and the EMA9. I see no reason why Bitcoin can't make a wick down here to 28.6 before popping back up and going on the run that everyone wants to see to 36K. I mean, it's clear as day right here. The bull market support band is way down here on the bottom. The mean of the Gaussian channel is even further. The two big things standing in the way as far as support are concerned of Bitcoin moving further down are the EMA 9 and the top of the Gaussian channel. So I definitely am thinking about setting some orders here around the 28.7 area. Maybe that's a long stretch. Maybe it only comes up to 28.9, which also happens to be the 0.382 Fibonacci retracement on the current move. Either way, I do think sub 29, at least on a wick basis, is very, very probable before making that move up to 36K. But hopefully, out of this video, what you've learned is how to use the BBWP, or at least how to just kind of look at it as a tool to make longer-term decisions. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below. I appreciate everybody watching the videos. I appreciate your engagement, and I'm committed to growing the channel. So any support that you can give, I'm here for it, and I appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video, and safe trading.